Welcome to On the Bubble Podcast, episode 87. I'm your host, Sabasa J. Wade, and with me is my co-host, Yuki Lee Bender. Today, our episode is going to be how to draft Aurora. I don't know what else to say today. Then let's just get right into it. Yuki, how was your week? What did you do this week?
I got back to Vancouver on the weekend, so back home now. I've since done a lot of Flesh and Blood. I've been drafting, I've been testing CC for Worlds, and I've been drafting more today. I think I've done like 8 or 9 drafts this week. 3 of them in person and then a bunch online on Runaways. So yeah, I've been playing a ton of Flesh and Blood. I've also been working on Flesh and Blood content. I guess I can't remember exactly what's come out since our last episode, but there's some content on Florian, including some coaching, like a coaching sample of me coaching a student on Florian. That one's available publicly. There's the Florian deck list and sideboard guide, as well as kind of like a deck tech video available on Patreon for Titanium Bubble and up. And I've also recently put out an Aurora CC guide. It's a list very similar to Bartaj Ziamba's, who ended up top 4ing the calling, something like that. He top 8'd the calling in Leon. List is very similar to that and has like a little bit of a mini sideboard guide, not quite as extensive as the Florian one, but also has a pretty extensive like how to play tips and tricks style article attached to it. I think it's about 4 pages long. It's very similar to the Everything I Know About Zen article I have. So if you are interested in Aurora or Florian, there's a ton of content on there. And yeah, honestly, that's kind of what I've been up to. Drafting a lot, playing a lot of CC, and working on content. I haven't been up to a whole lot else.
Yeah, amazing. Been playing a lot of Flesh and Blood. And just a note will be the Florian, the coaching session was on the Bubble YouTube channel, so check us out on YouTube as well. Is a link also in Patreon as well? So if you just go through the Patreon, you'll be able to find everything?
Yeah, you can go either way. There's a public post on Patreon for that coaching sample, and there's also the YouTube link. I also posted on Twitter. I think going forward, at least while this set is new, and maybe even going forward, depending on how well it's received, I'm going to try and post public content a little bit more frequently onto our YouTube. So maybe something along the lines of a weekly video if I can manage it, maybe every 2 weeks if that's more realistic. We'll see how much my schedule can handle, since I'm also back to work now teaching. So a lot going on. I want to put out a lot more content though, so I'm going to be trying to push for that a little bit. And if you have ideas of things you'd like to see, feel free to let us know.
Yeah, that sounds great. Okay, then do you want to just get into the Aurora, how to draft Aurora?
Yeah, let's do that. I guess to start off, I'm going to say that I think Aurora is a tricky deck to draft. I think it is very synergistic. And one of the things you're going to hear a lot throughout this episode is that you need like the right combinations of cards and you need the right pieces that work well together. And I think that it's easy to have an Aurora deck with good cards in it that doesn't function, and then have an Aurora deck with like maybe even seemingly worse cards in it, but if they all work well together, that deck will actually be very cohesive and very powerful. So I think that Aurora has like maybe the highest ceiling and also maybe one of the lowest floors in the format. And I definitely feel comfortable enough to be talking about it and doing this episode, but I also still feel like I'm learning and exploring about the hero. I think she's quite deep and also quite hard to build and quite hard to play. There's a lot going on with Aurora.
Yeah, I think the more mini combos you can have in your deck, the better this deck gets. And I think the individual cards in this deck are kind of unimpressive, other than maybe like Lightning Surge, right?
Yeah, a lot of them are like not super great, but when you can get everything to come together, you really can do things greater than the sum of its parts. And that's kind of like what Aurora is trying to do. And I think that there's like a number of synergy packages and different things in the decks, and we're going to be talking about that today. So I'm excited to get into that. But I'll say Aurora, for people looking to draft this, maybe at their PQs, is definitely a hero where I would do a little bit of practice and try out the different synergies that we've been talking about and get a feel for it. Because I think that, at least for myself, my first Aurora drafts were not successful. It took me a couple tries to start getting good ones. And even today, I had like a 3-0 draft, a 2-1 draft, and then I think I had an 0-2 draft. And the 0-2 draft kind of surprised me. I think part of it was that my opponent's decks were very good, but yeah, there's still lots to learn there.
Then I guess we'll just start by briefly mentioning what kind of blocks the lightning and the Runeblade cards have. So starting with the lightning cards, we have 25 commons. It's 3 blocks, which is Heaven's Claw, which is a reprint. The rest of them are mostly all 2 blocks at 15 2 blocks. There are 3 0 blocks and 4 no blocks. The 0 block is on a card called Fry, and I think I mentioned this like earlier in the earlier episodes, but man, having a 0 on the block value of our card is kind of sweet.
Yeah, you get to block with it if you really need to. Although most of the time you don't, to be honest.
Yeah, it's kind of torching value because there's no real reason that you need to have like a lightning card in graveyard, unlike the earth cards. So yeah, it's a way to cycle your card if you really get stuck with it, but I don't think it actually happens in this format. Nonetheless, the rares, there's gonna be 0 3 blocks in the rares. There's 6 2 blocks and 4 no blocks. The no blocks are in the electromagnetic somersault and the sigil conductivity, so those cards don't block.
Yeah. So overall, we mentioned this with Earth, that Earth pool didn't block well. Lightning pool blocks even worse because not only do they have some of the sigils and a whole bunch of 2 blocks outside of the one set of 3 blocks. In addition to that, they also don't have the defense reactions like Rootbound Carapace, and they also have like even more instants because part of Lightning's identity is instants. Notably, the electromagnetic somersault, especially the red one, is pretty good and can be used as a defensive tool. So keep in mind that even though it's a null block, it's often, maybe a block with a 3 block and a 2 block, and you bounce them back, and it's like a 0 for 5 defense reaction. So that one's like a little bit of like a sneaky block card. But regardless, the lightning pool does not block well, and you often have hands that block for like 9.
Yeah, sometimes way less.
Sometimes way less. Sometimes like 4. I think you don't want too many of those, but you need a little bit.
Yeah, it's kind of tragic when your opponent attacks you on a block, and you look at your hand and you're like, this whole hand blocks for 6, and you're like, wow.
Yep, definitely been there.
Okay, and also talking about the Runeblade cards. So Runeblade has 28 commons. We have 21 3 blocks and 7 2 blocks. And in the rares, we have 9 3 blocks and 4 2 blocks. So yeah, this Runeblade cards do block pretty well compared to the Lightning cards.
Yeah. So I think you do want a mix of the Runeblade and Lightning cards, and you'll probably get it because the Lightning cards are generally fairly contested. I also think that specifically your blues, you generally want to be mostly Runeblade cards, in my experience. I don't know if you disagree, but a lot of the Lightning cards are like not very impressive. Like there's a lot of like 0 for 2s and 1 for 3 block 2s. And some no blocks, like there's like Fry 0 for 1 block 0. And you can run like a few of some of these cards, especially if they have go again, but like you don't really want your deck to be full of them, and the more that you can have like blue 3 blocks in your deck, I think it raises the floor of your deck by a lot.
Yeah. Yuki, you ask me if I'd rather have blue 3 blocks or blue 2 blocks. You know my answer at this point. Always, blues should always be 3 blocks, unless there's like a good reason not to have it.
Yeah, and honestly, like all the blue Runeblade 3 blocks are pretty good, so don't overthink it. I don't. The ones that make rune chants are probably like a little better than the ones that don't. But honestly, they're all good. Like blue high notes, sometimes it's just randomly a 1 for 4. The crit's so good.
Yeah. Honestly, blue Hocus Pocus is like one of my favorite cards in the set.
Your opponent's at 1, blue Hocus Pocus, trigger my embodiment, 1, make a rune chant, and they're just like, no.
Yeah, that's a spot I would never want to be in. I guess we can just move right into the key cards. Like, unlike the last episode with Verdance, I feel like Aurora is a little bit easier to talk about in the sense of like this deck has only really like one. There isn't like multiple different decks you can draft, but there are more of like mini synergies that wants to accomplish the same kind of goal. So I feel like the goal will be to just like hit your opponent as hard as you can. And then all of these key cards are key cards, but the big note will be make sure that they synergize well. And synergy is more important, as we said earlier in the episode.
Yeah, absolutely agree. So one of the most important key cards to start with is Runehold Release. I think this might This is like up there. This might be the most powerful equipment in the set for me. It's definitely one of the most powerful equipment in the set. Not only is it one damage that is evasive and hard to stop, but it also just turns on so many of your other cards that care about creating auras, that care about dealing arcane damage, especially if their prevention's already down. That Runehold release is a huge consistency piece in these decks. And I don't want to talk about all the synergies because we're going to be going through some key cards and we can talk about it as it comes up. And you'll just anytime we're like, if you have a rune chant, this is really good. If you can make an aura, this is really good. And just remember that Runehold release does that on demand. And yeah, I think the Aurora decks that have Runehold release and the Aurora decks that don't are like, there's a huge difference.
Yeah, there's a big difference. Yeah, Runehold release is insane. It's I think the floor on this card is so high, and then the ceiling on this card is just like way higher, and it kind of makes a bad Aurora deck a good Aurora deck sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely agree with that. The next one is you need red lightning cards. Ideally, the starters that have go again. So that's Fry, Lightning Surge, Flittering Charge, and Electrostatic Discharge are sort of like the most premium ones. But honestly, all red lightning cards are pretty good. Flash is a little bit weaker, but all the attacks are very solid. The kind of key here is that I do think you can build a coherent deck almost entirely out of Runeblade cards. But if you are doing that, you are basically always better off being Florian, because if you are in the Runeblade card pool, you probably make Rune Chance, and then Rotwood Reaper is a 2-for-4, which is a lot better than a 1-for-1. So if you're just playing class cards, you would actually much rather be Florian. So in order to be Aurora, you kind of need at least some lightning cards. I don't think it has to be the most, but you need some good red lightning cards that you actually want to play to get Starfall online to be able to make the embodiments of lightning. Otherwise, like, there's just kind of no point to be Aurora.
Yeah, I think the biggest reason to be Aurora is Starfall, and
Mhm.
if you can't turn on Starfall, the Rotwood Reaper is just it just has a higher number everywhere, right? Like it just starts off at 2. Starfall you have to work to make it 2, and paying 1-for-1 with no go again is not where you want to be. And like when you do have to do that play, it does feel kind of bad. So yeah, just make sure you have some lightning cards, and the more the better, I think.
Yeah, I think it's hard to have too many lightning cards. Like I think if you have the 15 lightning red Aurora deck, your deck is probably insane. Also I think part of understanding how to draft Aurora is understanding when like maybe you have like 6 to 7 lightning reds that are pretty good and you can supplement that with Runeblade cards and have a coherent deck. And so there are definitely different flavors of Aurora, but it's really about having the right synergy pieces and understanding how to fit them all together.
So the next key card will be the 1-cost attacks, and this is basically what we're talking about when we need the synergy. I think almost all the 1-cost attacks are good, as long as you have the right pieces for them. And I think the lightning ones are pretty generically good, which is Heaven's Claw, Lightning 4, and Trip the Light Fantastic. All that's just 1 cost for 5 to end the turn with after you attack with Starfall. So they're not that great to just like play them out without attacking with other things first. Chain Enders, essentially, these are pretty premium. And if you don't have these, you might have an issue in closing out some games because your opponent will be able to convert like 2-card 7s and 2-card 8s all the time, and you'll need to somehow keep up with that. And a good way to do that is to end the turn with like a 1-for-5, and they do add up pretty quickly. Other cards in this section that are good are Runeblade cards like Hit the Hideout and Meet and Greet. Meet and Greet being the 1-for-4 on hit basically makes a rune chance, so it will be a 1-for-5 essentially as well. And Hit the High Note, if you can make the Aura, it'll hit for 6, so it's even better than a 1-for-5 if you can make it. And that's where Runehold release becomes, kind of premium. If you have like one Hit the High Note, you pair that up with a Runehold release. That's a easy way to do like a 1-for-7 essentially. And in the generics, we have Smash Up. This having an on hit and also being a 1-for-5 is pretty premium in Aurora as well.
Yeah, when you like hit your opponent super hard for a bunch of damage and then end on a smash up, it is a beating. I think smash up is like easily my favorite of this like rare generic cycle. I don't know about you.
Oh yeah, and it also hits the attack action that's like, usually in their arsenal. So like the on hit's actually real, unlike tongue tied.
Yeah, tongue tides is pretty bad. The 2 for 6 is sometimes good against like the wizard decks, but
Yeah, I have gotten got by tongue tied though. Is I had an electromagnetic discharge in my arsenal and they tongue tied me, and I was just like, I can't block this out unless I use my whole hand. But I also like don't want to lose this red electromagnetic discharge. So yeah, I got demolished that game.
definitely a little unfortunate. The next key card we have is Rune Rager Swarm. Honestly, I kind of like this card in all colors. The red one, especially, of course, but this is the 3 for 0. That gets go again if you've made Aura this turn, and it blocks for 3, notably. So this card is just very easy to convert. You can use it on defense, you can use it on offense, and so long as you have one Aura, they all get go again. So it's very good in multiples. Runehold Release turns this on for free, so one of the reasons Runehold Release is so good. But also, notably, if you've played a Lightning starter, so maybe you play like a Fry at the start of your turn, then you play Rune Rager Swarm, you can make an embodiment after you've attacked with the Rune Rager Swarm, and it will get the go again because it sees that you've made the aura, and then you still have the embodiment laying around. So you can potentially go like Fry, Rune Rager Swarm, um, make an embodiment, swing a Heaven's Claw, swing a Flittering Charge or something. So you can go like 3-3-5-4, and those turns are really, really impressive. So Rune Rager Swarm just like super, super flexible, and honestly, I think really good in both Rune Blades.
I guess the next card to talk about will be. Oh, you like Malefic Incantation? Do you want to talk about Malefic Incantation?
Yeah. I think Malefic Incantation is also very good. Just as like a 0 for 3 that you can play out with Go Again, especially the reds. Even the yellows are kind of okay if you're heavy enough in the Runeblade camp. But basically, like it just makes multiple auras. It makes an aura on the turn that you play it. And then once it's online, all your hit the high notes and all your Rune Rager swarms are just like turned on for free. And if you like end up having some smaller turns where like I've had play patterns where like maybe I have a turn where it's like I play an incantation, I play a Heaven's Claw, I make an embodiment, and then I arsenal something like Meet and Greet if they don't have prevention, or hit the high notes, or even Rune Rager Swarm, and you just like have that arcane damage to threaten already. You have the aura generation to turn on all your stuff. You have the go again, and you can just have like a really massive turn. So I've been pretty impressed with Malefic Incantation if you're heavy in the Runeblade pool. If you're more lightning centered, then you don't really need this card as much.
It is kind of nice that it is like the red one is essentially a zap. If you can get all the rune chants off it, and it's not too hard to get all the rune chants off it. So just having access to a red zap is nice, even though you're a rune blade.
Yeah, and it has go again. The next is sort of like a combination. Arcane Cussing and Deadwood Dirge. The bodice also helps this. The chest piece that destroys an aura and makes a rune chant also helps this. So yeah, you make the Arcane Cussing, you sacrifice it to either the Blood Torn Bodice or the Deadwood Dirge. The Arcane Cussing triggers, you get a bunch of rune chants, and we've been talking about why auras and arcane damage is important, and this is really good. And I think that like there's an interesting effect where the more rune chant makers you have, the easier it is to end your turn with rune chants left over, which then means that like if you have like 3 rune chants at the end of your turn, you can just kind of like play out an Arcane Cussing and then like attack them, and your rune chants are going to hit and they're going to trigger the Arcane Cussing. So you can almost kind of like hit a critical mass where if you have a lot of these effects, it's very, very good.
Yeah, they make each other better. But notably, you want these cards to be in red, right? Like the yellow and the blue copies of Arcane Cussing and Deadwood Dirge is much worse.
Yeah, I agree, especially in Aurora. In Florian, it's like kind of okay if you can turn on Florian. It's like it's not amazing, but it's like all right, especially if you can like pitch a yellow to Rotwood Reaper. It's like it's okay, but in Aurora, it's like pretty not great to be running those cards. So I definitely agree with that. And you really need the combination of these. Like if you just have like one Deadwood Dirge and no Cussings in your deck, it's bad. And similarly, if you have Arcane Cussing and you don't have a Deadwood Dirge or a Bodice in your deck, like it's also pretty bad. So you want like you want a combination of these, and ideally in multiples, and roughly like a 1-to-1 ratio. Like 2 red Arcane Cussing, 2 red Deadwood Dirge, and a Bodice is like very good, for example.
Yeah, that's an ideal suite of Runeblade arcane damage cards, honestly.
And notably, like, I think part of the reason that you can lean more Runeblade or you can lean more Lightning is a lot of the Lightning cards get go again from like embodiments or like playing instance in the case of Flittering Charge, which synergizes with the Lightning card pool. And then a lot of the Runeblade cards get go again. So like Rune Rager Swarm gets it from auras, and Meet and Greet gets it from dealing arcane damage, which works with the rune chants. And notably, Arcane Cussing and Deadwood Dirge also have go again. So this is sort of like your other way to convert hands is by combining these Runeblade cards with conditional go again. And as long as you have enough of those pieces that work together, you can have a pretty coherent deck. But you kind of either want to be heavy in the lightning lane for lots of go again or heavy in the Runeblade lane for lots of go again. But you're always probably going to have a mix of both lightning and Runeblade. It's just you can lean more one way or the other.
Yeah, that makes sense. I guess a Runeblade card with natural go again will be Oath of the Arknight, and one cost Runeblade attacks, or even things like Hocus Pocus. So if you have the one cost Runeblade attacks, those are good, but even the 0 cost attacks are good as long as you've started with like a Red Lightning starter, because you can swing with Starfall in between. Oath is a really good way to use your 2 floating resource if you pitch the blue into Starfall. So kind of like we were talking earlier in some episode where we wanted a 2 cost to play to pair up with the Starfall, and I feel like Oath might be the best 2 cost to pair this with. It might be the only 2 cost to pair this with other than the generic 2 for 6, and there's only one of those. So
yeah. So yeah, I think Oath is kind of my preferred one. It has a lot of synergy with all of them. Like it turns on hit the high notes condition. It makes if they can't prevent the rune chant from it, it gives Meet and Greet go again. So sometimes against the Earth heroes, especially, that can sometimes actually be very reliable. And even if you're playing maybe not the most exciting card, but Consuming Volition, I think if you have like enough red oaths, playing 1 or 2 red Consuming Volitions is like pretty reasonable with this, because it comes in for 7 and 1, and then if they've taken an arcane and it hits, they have to block or they discard, and the 7 is very annoying to block. So even that combination is very good. So Oath has a ton of synergy there. You can use Arcanic Spike, which is a 2 for 5 at red that gets +2 if you've dealt Arcane. And I think that this card, when it's good, is really good, because a 2 for 7 is kind of obscene. But there's often a lot of hoops you have to jump through where you need the rune chant generation. You need them to not be able to stop the rune chant generation. And like often that means starting with something to trigger the rune chant so that you're not showing this card and then swinging this card afterwards. And it's a lot of hoops to jump through. I kind of like the blue one because like a blue conditional 2 for 5 is pretty sweet. The red one is like you need a lot of arcane for that card to work, I think, but it can be good. I've seen it be good.
Yeah, that makes sense. In the same vein, 3 for 7s are good. This is just always good in like almost every set that we play, and I feel like we've been saying this since, what was the set that we started saying this in? Heavy Hitters? Yeah,
Heavy Hitters was a set that had just like a million 3 for 7s, and then since then we've had a lot more 3 for 7s, I think.
Yeah. So since then, like 3 for 7's been good, and even in this deck, 3 for 7s are still good. I think a warning here would be that if you have too many of them, it will force you to, or it will stop you from being able to convert 4-card hands. So you don't want too many of them, but you do want some, just so then like you can keep up with like the deck damage race. Even though you are the aggro deck of the format, you can still go to fatigue, and because you have a weapon, you can win these fatigue races. So just having a couple of 3 for 7s really do help in the fatigue race as well, if you are forced to get there. So just making sure you have some. I think the main one that I would want is like Vantage Point. This is the one that gets overpowered if you create an aura, and this is a good way to close games as well.
Yeah, Vantage Point definitely premium. The other one, Splintering Deadwood, is more of a Florian card, but hey, 3 for 7 block 3, that's a Raging Onslaught. We like Raging Onslaughts on this podcast. So yeah, that card's still very, very good, but I agree, Vantage Point getting the nod for the overpower.
Man, Splintering Deadwood is like, it looks so cool. I read it so many times and I'm like, how do I make this work in Aurora? And like 80% of the time it doesn't work. It just doesn't work. Nothing works with it.
Well, it works with arcane cussing.
Yeah.
It's not super exciting. It's okay.
Yeah, I think there was like one time where I'm like, oh, attack with splintering deadwood, and I've already started with a lightning card, and during reaction step I made an embodiment of lightning. I let the deadwood hit, and then I turned my embodiment of lightning into a rune chant. I drew up four and then regretted that it should have been an embodiment of lightning. So there was I made a fancy play and it hurt me. So turning an embodiment of lightning into a rune chat, maybe not worth it.
Yeah, usually not worth it.
But it was such a cool play.
It is a cool play. Yeah. I guess like the sweetest play you can do with this is like you have two blues and you already have an embodiment on board and you go arcane cussing, splintering deadwood, sacrifice the arcane cussing, it gets go again, and then you play an arcanic spike and you have like four rune chants or something. That sounds pretty cool, but it sounds pretty hard to set up.
Yeah, okay. So Splintering Deadwood is just a 3 for 7. It has a 3 block value. Good card. Nothing more.
Last card we'll talk about is Electromagnetic Somersault. Usually, especially the red one, it hitting all types of attack actions is very good. This card lets you block very well, and it can also be used on offense, bouncing your best card, while enabling some of your instant speed synergies, like with Flittering Charge. So Somersault Red is like a slam dunk in this deck. I think that yellow is a playable card if you are heavy into some of the like one costs and up. So I would say don't pick Yellow Somersault highly, but you can pick it maybe late in the pack, and you'll know if your deck is good with it. Like if you have a bunch of one costs and you see a Yellow Somersault, that card is very good in your deck. But I would get the one cost first and then pick up the Somersault, or pick it up very late and then hope you get rewarded, kind of a thing.
Yeah, that makes sense. The red somersault is really strong. I think the easiest way to think about this is even if most of your cards are 2 blocks, if you block with two blocks for block for 4 to the somersault, you bounce after damage, bouncing the two blocks back to your hand means that this card was a 0 for 4. And if any of them happen to be a 3 block, or if both are 3 blocks, that means you've essentially had a 0 for 5 or 0 for 6 defense reaction, and that is overstated. Let's just say that. So even arsenaling magnetic somersault's really good, and drawing up a hand and being like, how can I block with this? There's just like so many ways you can convert this card. This is a slam dunk. Like I would first pick this card if I see it.
Yeah, agreed. So we listed off a lot of key cards here. I'm going to give just like a super quick summary. You want red lightning starters. You want some amount of one cost attacks, ideally ones that work together. If you have high notes and meet and greet, make sure you have the synergy for them. Cards like Rune Rager Swarm is very good, but you need the aura support with it. Malefic Incantation is great with that. And then there's other synergy packages like Arcane Cussing, Deadwood Dirge, and Bodice, or Oath and one cost or 0 cost Runeblade attacks. But notably, you don't necessarily want all of these cards, and you need to understand what lane you are in, especially maybe once you're into like pack 2 and pack 3, because I think that it's easy to have a deck that is an Aurora deck that has some of these key cards. Like you might see some of these key cards, but they might not be very good in them. Like if you're primarily lightning based, you don't want Oath of the Arknights because it doesn't have target. It has to target a Runeblade card. I guess if you have enough go again, you can use it on the sword, but still, you get what I mean. Like you don't want, I don't know, you don't want like a ton of meet and greets if you like aren't necessarily able to give it go again with arcane damage, for example. Having a few is fine, but yeah, make sure you're adjusting according to what you want or what your deck is doing.
Yes, yes. The deck with like one copy of each of these key cards, probably not good.
Yeah, you really want to like solidify in like one or two of these lanes and then like have your deck be built around that rather than be like one of each.
Let's move on and talk about overrated and underrated cards from for this deck that we see kind of commonly. And I think number one will be Blast of Oblivion. The red one is fine, just being like a 0 for 4, but like the yellow and the blue is quite awful. I think Blast of Oblivion just doesn't have or a way to gain go again naturally, so it ends up being like a chain ender. But if you're gonna have this as a chain ender, you can honestly have anything else as a chain ender, and this probably isn't really a reason to be in Lightning 4. and I think like mostly like Blast Oblivion Yellow is just not a high pick at all, and it would be like a filler more than a card.
I think if you think of Blast to Oblivion as a textless 0 for 4 lightning card that blocks 2, you're probably more well served by doing that. It can sometimes do stuff, but especially in the context of Aurora, like you just don't really want to play sigils. Like even sigils of lightning are not premium. You'll play them if you get them late in the pack. Sure, you can maybe play it, but like you don't really want to fill your deck with sigils of lightning, and it's so hard to even have the sigil on board in the first place, and then also have the go again on your Blast to Oblivion, and then also have the instant to bounce the sigil, and then like have something to do with the sigil. Like there's just like so many steps here that I don't know. Like I've never actually seen Blast to Oblivion do anything impressive in Aurora. I don't know about you.
Nope, nope. I have never seen it be good. Well, the red 0 for 4 is nice. Like
Yeah, yeah,
it's a wounding blow that doesn't block for 3. It's fine.
yeah. But I haven't seen like the text part of it do something impressive. I'm sure that like it will happen, and like some listener will just be like, "Yeah, I had it happen in my draft game," and like that will come up. But I think it's just like so infrequent that when you're drafting this card, like just think of it as basically textless.
Yeah, yeah, and
Which puts it worse than most of the commons, right? Like Lightning Surge has conditional go again, Flittering Charge has conditional go again. So like of the 0 for 4 lightning cards, like this is like actually worse than the commons, I think.
yes, yes, I agree with that. The next overrated card. Do you want to talk about this?
Yeah, so I put Burn Up Shock here. I'm a little bit like hesitant, and I feel like there might be pushback on this card. I think Burn Up Shock is incredible when it's good. So that's kind of like the big thing. When Burn Up Shock is good, it is super, super good. And being able to shock for 1 damage at the end of the game, also pretty sweet and pretty clutch. Is also a block 3, so it's hard for this card to be bad. But the biggest thing that I want to say is that Burn Up Shock requires you to get the hit effect through. And the important thing here is that that means you probably need to be going multiple chain links wide and presenting like breakpoints and lots of damage. Because if all you're able to do after your Burn Up Shock is like Starfall for 2, here's 5, like your opponent's just going to block it, and then you've played a 0 for 1, and like yeah, it forces them to block, but it's not very exciting. So you need a way to push this through, and because of that, I think Burn Up Shock is mostly a card that makes a good Aurora deck into a great Aurora deck. I've definitely been run over by this card, and when it's good, it is so insane. But don't like abandon ship to pick up Burn Up Shock and suddenly become an Aurora if you like don't really have the card pool for it, because it's not going to carry your draft on its own. Like it's really a card that is as good as its surrounding pieces. If you have the surrounding pieces, it can be an absolute house, and if you do not, it is really sad. It also kind of needs big hands. Like Burn Up Shock on small hands is often not especially great, so that's another thing to consider with this card.
Okay, yeah, I think that makes sense. So basically, what you're saying is this card makes a good Aurora deck better and a bad Aurora deck worse. Maybe not worse, but
Yeah,
it doesn't get saved.
like yeah, like I think basically like all the other meld cards are just like standalone better. Like you can just play Pulsing Aether Life, and it's going to make your Verdance deck way better, and you can play Comet Storm, and it's going to make your Acilio deck like way better than if you didn't have it. And same thing with Arcane Seed's Life. Even if you're a Florian that can't turn on his hero ability, like Arcane Seed's Life is still just a good card. I think Burn Up Shock is a little different in that, like, don't get me wrong, I might pick this early and try and be Aurora, but it's just understand that you really do need the support for it, and it's not just like it's not a bomb that's going to carry you. It's just a good card that can make your good Aurora deck into an even better one.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, then the last overrated card that I have put down is Twinkle Toes. Twinkle Toes is a card, I feel like if you've drafted this set maybe like 3-4 times, you will now understand that it's quite hard to use. And at least in the first couple of weeks, I feel like people are picking Twinkle Toes a little bit too highly. And this is not a card that makes you want to go into Lightning. The text reads that it prevents 2 damage, so it sounds better than Runaways, which is preventing 1 damage if you take a damage this turn. But honestly, most of the time, I think I'd rather have Runaways than Twinkle Toes. And there are exceptions to this that I'll talk about in right after this. But I think in general, if you don't have ways to turn on Twinkle Toes or efficient ways to turn on Twinkle Toes, you kind of don't want this card. And I'd be trying to get this card maybe like 10th or 11th pick more than if I would never like third or fourth pick this card. Are you in the same boat as this, Yuki?
Um, yeah, largely. I think I'm maybe a little bit higher on it than you are. I think, especially early in the draft, I'm a little bit more willing to speculate on this card because you have more time to find the pieces that go with it. And similarly, if I'm a lightning hero, I may try to speculate on the cards that go with it if I'm not giving up too much to try and get the Twinkle Toes combo, because I think when you do, it is very good. But I definitely agree with you, like not wanting to take this super early. This is nowhere near Rune Hold Release or the Earth Equipment or even Hold Focus for Wizard. It is definitely a step below. And yeah, I think I'm willing to try and jump through those hoops because I think it's pretty powerful when you do get it. But yeah, I certainly wouldn't be like Twinkle Toes, time to go lightning. Like it's not going to influence me. It's like I want to be lightning and I want to get Twinkle Toes like mid pack early in the draft or like already have the pieces for it. But if I have a good lightning deck already, yeah, I'll pick up Twinkle Toes and try and get it to work. I think it can make your good lightning deck into a great one.
Then I guess like the next question to talk about Twinkle Toes is like, what are the cards that you want with Twinkle Toes? I have a couple that I want to talk about. Do you have any cards that you're really looking for once you get a Twinkle Toes?
I think the best one is probably just Red Brush Off. Red Brush Off prevents the next time you'll be dealt 3 or less damage, Brush Off will prevent that, and you can combine this by like you play Brush Off, you play Twinkle Toes, and you can basically make it so Twinkle Toes will prevent 2, and then the Brush Off will prevent 3. Notably, Brush Off does need to be covering the full effect, so if they're like attacking for 7, you might have to do like 2 block, Brush Off, Twinkle Toes to get the 2 and 2 from the blocking card and the Twinkle Toes and the 3 from the Brush Off. But I think that Brush Off is probably the cleanest way to turn on Twinkle Toes, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, I think this is like the best place for Brush Off, unfortunately, in this set. Brush Off probably is one of the weakest cards in the whole set.
Yeah.
And I think the red Brush Off is the best place for the red Brush Off is with Twinkle Toes. I think one other card that I really like this with is Arcane Polarity. This doesn't have like the issue with Brush Off that it might not work sometimes if your opponent is coming in for too much arcane or too much physical. The biggest downside to Arcane Polarity is that their turn has to be kind of wide that includes arcane damage for you to be able to do this, because you do need to first take arcane damage to turn on Arcane Polarity. Then you play the red one getting 4 life, and then if you can prevent like a physical damage or more arcane later in the turn, it is pretty good. A very good counter is if your opponent plays Comet Storm, you take the 1 from Shock, then you gain 4 with Arcane Polarity, and then you prevent 2 with Twinkle Toes. Can be a pretty big blowout turn if your opponent plays like a Comet Storm. And I like it in like those kinds of scenarios. I really like Arcane Polarity.
Yeah, I agree. Arcane Polarity is the other card I was thinking of. It's also good against Rune Chants. Rune Chants are a very easy way to trigger the you've taken arcane damage clause, and then you can get your full value pretty easily. And the other spot is Verdant's Pings. When she gains life if she's online is another easy way to trigger this combo. So I think that it is good. It's a little bit less universal, especially if you're just like playing a wizard that wants to like zap you for 4 every turn, and it's just like, yeah, this doesn't really work the way that I want it to. You like don't really get to deny the surge either, but it's still good. So yeah, I want either Arcane Polarity or Brush Off if I have Twinkle Toes, maybe both. Often I'll pick like a Brush Off. Like if I know I'm lightning and I can get like a 10th pick red Brush Off, I'm like, I'm gonna take this and then I'm gonna slam the Twinkle Toes when I see it. That's like how I like drafting this combo, I guess.
Yeah. It's like once you have one side, you kind of want the other one, but then neither of these cards are high picks. So these are the cards that kind of reward you for being in Lightning, I think, is that if people aren't picking Twinkle Toes highly, you should be getting them late. And then cards like Brush Off Red are cards that should be coming late as well. So these are like your premium 10th, 11th pick that rewards you for being in Lightning, I think.
Yeah, agreed with all of that. And because like you have to do all this work to get Twinkle Toes, if you see Runaways and you're a Lightning hero, you can kind of just draft Runaways and it's pretty good. Similarly, if you have the Prevent One headpiece, that card is like basically just as good as the Lightning Helmet. The Lightning Helmet basically just blocks one. It's like pretty hard to get an effect out of it, especially in Aurora. It's a little better in Acilio, but yeah, I think the replacement level of Runaways or the what is it, like the Helmet of Second Thoughts or something, those two are very close to the Lightning equipments, much more so than the Earth equipments have a bigger gap between them than the Lightning. The Lightnings are kind of, they're okay.
Yes. Talking about Flash of Brilliance, I think that's the card moving into the underrated cards that I think is kind of underrated, at least in my opinion. I have a feeling that maybe people are like looking at Flash of Brilliance and Twinkle Toes and being like, wow, these cards are way worse than the Earth variants. And you're right. They are way worse than the Earth variants. But Iron Rot Helmet is just a good card. So you should be playing this card as an Iron Rod helmet, and I would pick this card kind of highly because it literally gains you one life.
Yeah. And I think especially if you have like, if you can get this mid pack, that's great. But also the other spot is if you already have a very good Lightning deck, just take the equipment. Like what like upgrading your yellow flittering charge to a red flittering charge is like kind of whatever. I'd rather just have the one life on board.
Yes. Having the guaranteed 1 point instead of the if you draw it 1 point is it's a small but very noticeable difference. The as a note though, the text on this card kind of blank, right? Like I haven't really seen anyone but an Acilio use this text.
Yeah, Acilio can use the text. Aurora doesn't do anything. Just kind of like how Blast to Oblivion doesn't really do anything.
The next underrated card is Flash. So Flash is a card that I feel like people aren't picking at all. Obviously, this card is not as premium or good as any of the other like starters, but this does still turn on your Starfall. So if you can go Flash, Starfall, a 1 cost for 5 that typically doesn't have go again, and then end with another 1 cost for 5, it's a pretty easy pitch a blue, Flash, 1 cost for 5, 1 cost for 5, and a Starfall, which is a 4 card 12, which is fine. I'm not saying this is good. I wouldn't pick it if I don't have to, but it is a good starter if you are missing Lightning starters. So I would pick this card if your draft is going pretty poorly. I wouldn't pass it. I would just make sure I have enough starters, and I would count this card as one of them if you really have to. But I think it is underrated. I've gone like last pick Flash, last pick Flash, last pick Flash, and then I've had 2 of them in my deck, which was totally functional and fine. It's fine is where I'm at with this card.
That's pretty interesting. I definitely haven't been wanting to put Flash in my Aurora decks, but I think what you said makes sense. Maybe I'll keep a bit of an eye out for it. I do think Flash has an important role to play in Acilio, which we can cover later. Basically, just like giving spells go again is sometimes pretty good. But yeah, that's for another episode.
Yeah, I think the decks where Flash is almost never good, but it's better than playing just like no go again cards in general, or like if you're really low on starters and people have contested Fries and Lightning Surges and Flittering Charge because these are just naturally good. Flash is just like a good replacement level card that might hold your deck together, so then you don't have these turns where you can't convert your hand. Notably the red and the yellow one. The blue one is still quite awful.
Yeah, agree with all of that. The last underrated card I want to talk about is Blue Lightning Surge. I think people know Lightning Surge is pretty good. The blue one, like we talked about how good blue 3 blocks are, and that is still true. I think that Blue Lightning Surge is one of the few Lightning 2 blocks that I'm actually kind of happy to play. And it's just because when you arsenal it and it's a 2 go again Lightning starter, like it's actually really good. Like this is like one of the best, maybe the best blue, or like it's certainly like one of the best blues that you could possibly arsenal, which has some value. So you don't want like too many of these, but having a couple Blue Lightning Surges is like actually pretty good. And sometimes I see this card go kind of criminally late. I guess maybe the other blue lightning card that is like okay is Trip the Light Fantastic, since you can discard it to get the prevention against some arcane. So having like a couple of those is okay. But yeah, basically like those two blue lightning block twos are like reasonable, and the rest of them are like I'd much rather have block threes.
Yes, very true, very true. I think Lightning Surge just being the most powerful starter is good. And I think like Lightning Surge Blue is like a strict upgrade to Flash, essentially in all the colors. But like I think we're in the same kind of like thought process of like why Flash is good and why Blue Lightning Surge is good are like kind of the same reasons. Like you just kind of make sure you don't want to brick your turns and make sure you want to be able to convert your hands with these cards.
Okay, I can see that. That makes sense to me.
So those were our underrated cards. Do we want to move on to the gameplays for Aurora?
Yeah. So I think there's kind of like a couple of different ways that Aurora can play, and you can often kind of combine these playstyles a little bit. The first way is just converting your hand pretty consistently. You go lightning attack, sword into another attack. You can easily add on to this, like you can make an embodiment at the end of that turn for consistency. Maybe you find a way to slot in a Rune Rager Swarm and have you go an extra chain link wide. Like there's like different ways to add on to this. Maybe you add an electrostatic discharge to give something +3, but the basic idea of like lightning attack, sword attack, and using all of the resources that you pitch is like kind of what you want to be doing in your Aurora deck most of the time if you can. So this is like sort of like the goal of most Aurora decks. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think the goal of Aurora deck is like if you want to be able to look at your 4 cards that you draw and then you want to be able to play them all on offense. And if you can't, you really want the card that you're blocking with to be a 3 block. In that sense, it's basically you want to be playing really good Flesh and Blood, right? Like classic aggro Flesh and Blood.
And I think it's like a little harder in this set because you have to work harder for the go again. So you really need like the right pieces. Whereas I think like Zen last set just had so much go again on his cards that you didn't have to think quite as much. Whereas Aurora, like you really need to carefully craft and draft your deck. The other thing that you can be doing on your Aurora turns that can be especially good against some of the Earth heroes is you can set up. And you can do setup turns. Like the most basic setup turn is you go, you block 6, you go Heaven's Claw for 5, make an embodiment, go, and then you have go again on your next turn. It's not where you want to be, but you may find yourself doing some of these turns. And if you can combine some of, and the other thing you can potentially do is things like Dirge and Arcane Cussing to get rune chance and start stacking rune chance. I've definitely like set up 6 rune chance and an embodiment and then done like 20 damage on a turn. And then that is like another way that Aurora can play. I think that in general, I'm preferring to convert my hand every single time, but look for those setup turns. She's very good at carrying resources over to the next turn, whether they be embodiments of lightning or rune chance. And there are some pretty powerful setups that you can do. So you may do a combination of setting up and converting, probably mostly converting, but there are Aurora decks that are a little more setup-y. They're probably a little bit weaker, but you can still make them work. They're still pretty good.
The most important part about these setup turn Auroras is that you need to have a density of 3 blocks, and you can't be doing things like blocking for 4 and then doing these setup turns because then you'll fall too far behind. You do really need to be blocking for 6 and then doing these setup turns and keeping your life totals high, so then you can actually like keep a 4-card hand the next turn and come in for like 22 damage, things like that.
And the last thing I want to mention is just be aware that sometimes ending on a rune chant with a card like Hocus Pocus, or if you trigger an incantation, can be very good, especially if you get to like arsenal something like a second strike that gets go again if you've dealt a damage and they don't have prevention, or a meet and greet that gets go again if you've dealt arcane, or even an arcanic spike that gets the +2 if you've dealt arcane. Looking to kind of end on a rune chant and then arsenal one of these pieces that go with that is a play pattern that I've felt coming up a little bit, and it's just something to look out for. It can be really powerful.
I think one last note would be very aware of how many lightning starters you have in your deck. And if you draw 2 of these lightning starters, be be willing to not play that one of those starters in the middle of your turn, like an electromagnetic discharge, just to get the +3. And you might want to arsenal the card so then you can make sure you have a starter for the next turn. And this is going to be very important because if you ever draw up a 4 card hand and then you don't have a starter or a way to gain go again, that could be a game losing scenario. So just make sure that if you have the option to maybe just like Arsenal or Fry or Arsenal Electromagnetic Discharge, you might want to do that instead of playing it, so then you can attack with your Starfall the next turn and have everything turn on again.
Yeah, that's a fantastic point. There's a big difference between the like mid game swing Heaven's Claw, make an embodiment, and you have life total, and you were able to block that turn, and you're kind of okay with it. Like that's fine. But when you're at low life totals and you have full tempo, and your opponent like blocked out last turn, and all you can do is send 4 or 5 and make an embodiment, like that is how you lose games of Flesh and Blood as Aurora. And are often arsenaling that starter can really help with that. Similarly, I think you should be counting your starters, like Jay said, know how many are in your deck, and think roughly like how many cards have I been through. Like maybe there's 12 cards left in my deck that I haven't seen yet, and I have 1 starter in there. Well, maybe I should be making more effort to end on an embodiment so that I'm not going to brick on my next turn. Or I have 4 starters in the remaining 12 cards in my deck, so maybe I'm able to gamble a little bit and push if I really need to. But I think you should be thinking in these terms when you're playing Aurora, and just be aware of your overall density, but also like how many are remaining in your cards that you haven't seen, so you can, yeah, make some informed decisions.
Yeah, unlike the ninjas in the past couple of sets, Aurora really, you really do need to think and be aware of the cards that are left in your deck, right? Like it's not like, dump your hand every turn. It's like, oh, can I make sure my next turn is okay? And like, do I need this embodiment? Do I need to save cards in my deck? Like, there are more things to think about, unlike the traditional aggro decks. I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing, but it definitely makes the set more skill intensive than the ones where you just like put on your blinders and put every card in the chain link.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. I think overall I like it, but it does make Aurora difficult to draft. And I've definitely heard some people like frustrated with Aurora and be like, should I draft Aurora? I don't know. Like maybe I let other people draft Aurora. So yeah, she's a tricky hero to draft, but hopefully this helps you kind of get to where you need to be with that hero.
Then let's move on to our deck outline. Did you want to do this or do you want me to do it?
Yeah, I can do it. So you want about 8 to 12 blues. The more costed cards you have, the more blues that you want, especially if you have like multiple 3-for-7s. You might want more towards the 12 blue side because you may need 2 blues on some turns. There's definitely Aurora decks that can use that and can do so very efficiently. If your deck is much more red line and Cheerios, then you can, by that I mean 0 costs and 1 cost, you can get away with closer to 8 blues. You want lightning starters. More is better, but I think about 6 good ones, ideally red, is like kind of the minimum threshold. I've definitely had like 6 lightning starter Aurora decks that feel very good. So I think that like if you have the right Runeblade cards, 6 can be plenty. But in general, I would lean towards having more lightning starters if I can.
The more the better. Just
Yeah.
Simple. Yeah.
Yeah. It just makes your deck more consistent. And I think that generally like the ones with fewer lightning starters have to do a lot more thinking about like how many starters are in my deck. Do I need an embodiment this turn so I don't brick on my next turn? How am I going to manage my Runehold release to unbrick my Rune Rager Swarm, and like all these like little mini games throughout the game. And if you mess it up, you can just like have a turn that doesn't function. So yeah, the lower you are in lightning starters, the tighter you have to play with all those other pieces.
But then the more lightning cards you have, the more you can put your blinders on and play every hand.
Exactly. So that's why more is better. And the key to Aurora decks, maybe this is a bit of a cop-out, but you just need enough go again to consistently convert your hands. That really is the key, regardless of if you're more lightning, like we talked about, or if you're more synergy Runeblade focused. You just want to be able to convert your hands and use all your resources every turn. And if your deck is able to do that, it will be good. And if your deck's not able to do that, you won't be good. So really think about your curve. Think about things like oaths and 1 costs, or 0 costs and 3 costs, or you can have like a bunch of 1 costs because you can pitch a blue and play like 1 cost, 1 cost, 1 cost, and that's like also fine. But just make sure that like, I don't know, you don't want like a bunch of 1 costs and a bunch of 3 costs, for example. Like that's probably going to be clunky. So just be a little careful with that. And then finally, make sure that you have enough arcane and aura generation for your Runeblade cards if you have them. So your meet and greets, your arcanic spikes, hit the high notes, and Rune Rager swarms, you really, really do need to be supporting these cards with rune chant generation, or for them to be good, especially if you have like multiples of them, or embodiment generation in the case of high notes and Rune Rager swarm, I suppose. But yeah, you need to get those auras for these cards to be good cards. And similarly, if you're on Deadwood Dirge and Arcanic Cussing, you need those. You need both of them. You need the combinations, not just one half of the combo, and not just, like we said, you don't want the deck that has like one of each of these key cards. You want to be kind of like solidified into like a certain version of Aurora.
I think throughout the episode we keep on saying this, but the most important thing about Aurora, or the fundamental best thing about Aurora, is how well she can convert her 4 card hands. And none of the other heroes in this set can convert 4 card hands this easily, and Aurora is the one that can do that. So take advantage of it and just make sure you can do this. And the less you can do this, the other decks become better at just like having better 2 card hands or better 3 card hands. And Aurora is a deck that should and prioritize making her 4 card hands better, or even her 5 card hands better.
Yeah, completely agree. And I do think that the flip side of all of this is that the good Aurora decks, I think, are amongst the best decks in the format. If you're just able to consistently convert for like 12 plus damage on your 4 card hands, it is pretty good. A lot of decks have a combination of 3 blocks and 2 blocks, and like don't want to do all that much blocking, so they end up leaking damage pretty fast. And if you just keep converting, you can really get them low. And then if they have to start blocking and you keep starfalling every turn, they just, like, I have seen Aurora's fatigue earth decks if they are able to stay on the front foot. But the key part is staying on the front foot and converting those hands consistently. Because, you know, if you're swinging 5 twice in a turn, so you're trading like 1 card for 2 cards essentially, and then you're swinging Starfall for 2 damage and it doesn't take any cards out of deck, that's like very, very good for fatigue math. It's better than throwing a 3 for 7 every turn, actually.
Okay, then I guess the very common question: do you want to go first or second in this deck?
I think if you have a good Aurora deck that can convert 4 card hands in the blind on average, you really want to go second. You're like a traditional aggro deck, so the best Aurora decks will want to go second. If you are low on go again lightning cards, and maybe you're playing towards going like attack for 5, like attack with like a 5 for 1, like a Heaven's Claw, go Starfall, go attack for another 5 for 1, and end on an embodiment, you may need to go first to get that rolling. So if your deck really mostly has go again from the embodiment and you need to keep making the embodiment every turn, you want to go first. But also notably, something Jay and I talked about before this episode is that these types of Aurora decks are often the weaker Aurora decks and are not the most impressive. And if you end up having to block or you end up getting too low, it can kind of fall apart. So this isn't where you really want to be as Aurora, but if you do have a weaker Aurora deck, it's possible to have it be serviceable and actually just need to go first and have a bit of a setup to really get rolling. But it's not where you would be if you can choose.
Yeah, I think on that note, Aurora's hero ability is a cost. Like, it really is a cost. Like, 2 resources is not cheap. And yes, you do get go again and lets you convert, but paying 2 every turn is it's a very high cost that, like, it can mess up your values for each of those turn cycles, and you really do want to avoid it if possible, which is why we think that having the deck with the starters is like the most important part of Aurora, so you don't actually have to make an embodiment. Obviously, making an embodiment when it's good is obviously good, but if you do it too many times, it could be the reason why you lose the game, is because you spent 8 resources, 10 resources into Aurora's ability, and that could lose you the game.
Yeah, a trap I sometimes see people do is like they keep back a card and they like play out their turn and it's pretty efficient, and then they go, I really want the embodiment, so I pitch this like yellow Heaven's Claw to the embodiment, and it's like, woof, you traded 3 life for that embodiment. Like you could have just blocked for 3 with that card, and 3 life for an action point is like maybe sometimes that's okay. There's spots where that will be correct, but most of the time you'd rather have the 3 life, because if you end up having to do some additional blocking on the next turn and you can't really make use of the go again, like it's a disaster. So yeah, don't overvalue that hero ability. It is good. You want to use it sometimes, but it's not like every single turn you use your hero ability.
Okay, then let's quickly talk about the matchups. I feel like we talked about how to play Aurora a lot, and I think in most of the matchups, you kind of just want to be the aggro deck and do that. So, but let's talk about each of the heroes specifically, and let's start with Florian first.
Against Florian, you can do the consistent aggro, beat them down. That's probably where you want to be. But you can also win by setting up larger turns and then doing some blocking and just kind of like going like 15 damage turn. I'm going to block Heaven's Claw, make an embodiment. Hope you can't really punish me for it. Another 15 damage turn and kind of play in that way. So depending on what your deck is suited to, you can play in one of those 2 ways, or maybe a combination. But against the Earth heroes, you are more likely to have the time to set up. What you don't want to do against the Earth heroes is like trade 2 card hands back and forth. They are better at that than you are. So if you're playing a small hand, you want it to be to build up towards a big hand, not to just like send 6 back and forth with them, because they'll do that all day and you're going to run out of cards.
Yeah, if you send 6 and then they send 8, you're gonna lose that game.
Verdants, honestly, kind of the same thing, with the caveat that if they are on the wizard pile, you may need to lean a little more into setting up. The wizard deck tends to block very, very well and just want to drag out the game. And you can kind of get there with good math, but I've also had them just kind of like stall me out and I can't quite get there, and they just like burn me out at the very end. So especially if you don't like have life gain to prolong the game, or like brush off twinkle toes to prolong the game, I think that you may need to be building towards bigger turns and try to really, really push through, rather than playing like if you do 5-2-5 and they have an embodiment of Earth and they could go like block 4, leak 4, and then, you know, like on their turn zap you for, or like Scalding Rain you with Exploding Aether for 7, like that's not great for you, and it doesn't take long for you to fall behind in that race.
Yeah, I think Verdance is one of those heroes where it wants to block with 3 cards and play 1 a lot, and they
Mhm.
don't really mind blocking with 2 cards and coming at you for 4 arcane. So just make sure that if you are gonna let them block, that you force them to block with all the cards in their hand, or you kind of just don't let them block at all. Even coming in for like smaller numbers a lot is more annoying for them than coming at them at like for 4 than a 4. Like 2-2-2 might be even more annoying for them.
Yeah, especially if they have that embodiment. So,
Mhm.
so yeah, keep all that in mind. I think if it's more of an Earth Verdance, though, you can play similar to Florian, where you can just keep pressuring and consistent pressure, and that's very good. So, Wizard Pile, more setup. Earth Verdance, more consistent damage.
Yeah, and I think a note would be like Verdance has a hard time converting 4 cards. So even if you just like play some auras past, that's probably fine against Verdance, and just let them have a 4 card hand. They're gonna have a hard time converting it.
Yeah, and having those auras to like have a bunch of onboard damage is just like such a good way to push over the top of what they can reasonably block. So yeah, I really like all those Rune Blade auras that we talked about, into the Earth heroes especially.
Okay, then what about the mirror, Aurora mirror?
I think this is like kind of just your classic aggro mirror. Go second, hit them hard, have good math. If you're better on blocking, do some blocking. If you're gonna get too low, you know, maybe consider preserving life total so that you give them time to brick, because unlike something like Zen, Aurora really can just brick. So yeah, if you're behind, don't be afraid to preserve life total. And in that vein, having 3 blocks, very good in the matchup.
Yeah, yeah, having 3 blocks against Aurora, very good. This is a matchup. If you can force your opponent to block with their 2 blocks first, you're gonna win the game. So try and have better math and get them to a critical point, like 1 to 2 life, as early as possible.
Yeah. And notably, if you're going to block, you want to block early in the chain to prevent second strike. So often if you have like the lightning crown on board and they're coming in for 4 and you want to block with the 3 block, giving the crown in the 3 block is often pretty good because sometimes they're like really hoping that they're going to hit for that second strike, and if you shut that down you can make their turn significantly worse. So yeah, if you're going to block out early. And in general, I think the mirror breakers for Aurora are going second, always good. Equipment, if you have more equipment on board, you're just kind of starting ahead, and that's really good in these races. Blocking well, we talked about, and just having consistent go again, because one of the ways that you can lose when you're ahead is by bricking on go again. So if you don't brick, if your deck is less bricky than their deck, you are far more likely to be in a good position than they are, is basically how I'll put it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Then, I guess lastly, how do we beat Ocilio?
I think a lot of the things that we have said about Aurora apply here. The blocking early is even more important because he can just do a bunch of arcane damage and kill you out of nowhere. The less ways to deal with arcane damage you have, the more that you just have to try and race them down. And the more that you have cards like Trip the Light Fantastic to prevent things like Surge, Brush Off, or Arcane Polarity with Twinkle Toes, all those kinds of defensive assets in the matchup, the better this matchup's going to be, and the more that you can play like a little bit of a value game into them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think this is the spot where you really want Twinkle Toes and Brush Off, or Twinkle Toes with Arcane Polarity. And man, having this against Ocilio and not having it is like kind of night and day, right?
Yeah, agreed.
They start with 18 life, so like as an aggro deck, that's kind of your dream scenario. And then having like Twinkle Toes Brush Off means that like they can't just like randomly kill you either. It's kind of great.
Yeah, agree with all of that. I think that if your Aurora deck is very good, you're kind of favored into Ocilio because you have more life and you're like often more efficient. Of course, you're playing limited and it's not always that simple. And sometimes you brick and Ocilio just zaps you for a bunch. So Ocilio definitely kind of like a little bit of a scary deck to play against in limited in general. I feel like when I'm playing against Ocilio, I never know like, am I just gonna die out of nowhere? Or are they just gonna like attack me for 4 and pass because they bricked? And it's like one of the two. And sometimes you get like a combination. Like you're just like, how do I ever win? They did like 4, 6 arcane, 3 arcane, and you're just like, yeah, I'm super dead. And then on the next turn, they're just like lightning surge. And you're like, is that from Arsenal? They're like, no, I didn't have an Arsenal. And you're like, oh, okay, sure.
Ocilio is an interesting deck. I am still unsure of how best to play Ocilio, but I am excited to learn about Ocilio, mostly when I talk to you when we do that episode soon.
Yeah, I have been putting in the work with Ocilio. I think he's actually pretty good if you get the good version of him. Who knows? Maybe next week we can talk about Ocilio.
Okay, so that's basically everything that we had to say about Aurora. Is there anything
How do
else?
you...
Oh, good.
So I have a question that maybe some of our listeners would be interested in. How do you find yourself usually getting into this deck? Like what leads you to drafting Aurora?
Me, typically, if I see a red starter, I would typically pick it up. Something like Lightning Surge or like an Electrostatic Discharge, something like a Fry. Any of them at red is typically the way that I get into it, or something like a Rune Hold Release. I would pick up a Rune Hold Release, be kind of open to be on either Florian or Aurora, and then if I see the Lightning starters again, then I would end up in Aurora. And if I don't see the Lightning starters, I typically end up in Florian. Is like how I navigate Aurora. Is like I start with usually like the Runeblade stuff, and then I would end up in Aurora, or I would see Lightning starters, and then I would pick up the other cards that go well with it. How about you, Yuki? How do you want to get into Aurora? I guess would be a better question.
Yeah, I think very much the same approach. I want to see lots of lightning reds. The other way, like you said, is you draft a bunch of Runeblade stuff and then you solidify into Aurora when you start seeing the lightning cards being open, or you just end up in Florian as sort of like a default. I would say that like drafts, I like picking the strongest cards in the pack a lot in this format. So I've definitely had drafts where I have like 1 to 2 premium lightning cards, 1 to 2 premium earth cards, and then like 3 good runeblade cards, and then I'm just like waiting to decide like which one I'm in, and then I see like something good late, and it's like, okay, I'm Florian, or okay, I'm Aurora now. But yeah, I'm often like have like a little bit of the good element cards when you see them because they're often contested, and then if you see those packs where it's just like, yeah, there sure is like a blue harvest season and a blue fertile ground, and I'm not really that deep in earth that I want to be picking these cards, and there's like blue flittering charge and blue somersault. Like, I don't really want to pick these cards, but there's like red rune rager swarm, and that's pretty good. Like that's often the spots where I'll like solidify into a class rather than the element cards. But if you see the premium element cards, I think you're usually taking those.
Yeah, yeah. I think there was a situation where like I ended up like picking up like a red lightning surge first, and then like 2 or 3 other people in the same draft pod did like very similar. They like picked up like red flittering charge, red electrostatic discharge, and then like we look at the next packs and like all the lightning cards are missing. So like nobody went lightning, and then that's how we ended up with like the 7 Earth pod once, where everyone had lightning cards and reds. So all the Earth heroes actually had the red lightning cards, and like the one person who was in lightning got everything else, and that deck was pretty strong.
That, yeah.
Yeah, because we had a discussion of like how we ended up in all Earth, and we are just like, where did all the lightning cards go? I'm like, I have 3 of them. The next person has 3 of them. The person next to them have 2 of them. Like, I see what happened now.
Yeah, lightning is definitely more prone to being overdrafted. Like, earth is more popular, but lightning's card pool is shallower. Like, the yellows and the blues aren't so good. The reds really are much, much better, especially on the 0 cost. Like, 0 for 3s are so much worse than 0 for 4s. You really want those breakpoints. So yeah, the lightning card pool gets like eaten up much, much quicker, whereas like, you're just like, any colors of Autumn's Touch is a good card. Any color of Fruits in the Forest is a good card. Any color of Cadaverous Tilling is a good card. Like, yeah, the Earth is just, all the colors are kind of good, and it kind of almost doesn't matter which ones you have. There's like a few junky Earth cards in certain pitches, but like,
yeah, but like you want like blue Strength of the Seasons, right? Like it's like, wow, that's a hard card to get, huh? Isn't it? A common in Earth that you wanted in blue or yellow? Great.
and then we're talking about the lightning cards, and we're just like, Trip the Light Fantastic and Lightning Surge aren't bad. The rest of them I don't want in my deck. It's like that's kind of the difference between lightning and earth, right?
Yeah, the lightning cards are, the yellow strips are much worse, and the blue strips are, they don't even block for 3.
You know what's like maybe the best illustration of this? Do you know how many? Do you know how many blues are in most Aurora decks in CC?
No, is it like 9? 12?
Yeah, it's around. It's like 6 to 12. I seen 6 to 12.
There's 6 blue decks?
There's 6 blue decks, and I'd say 9 is common, and 12 is considered. The list that I posted on Patreon has 12 blues, and you board some of them out sometimes to go down to 9, and people are like, "That's a lot of blues." So this isn't constructed. If you're only playing 12 blues, and they are like mostly lightning blues, but if there's like only like that many lightning blues that you're willing to play in constructed, like, hopefully that should illustrate something for you about draft as well, because they are related, right? Like there just aren't good lightning cards at blue. Like some of the blues you play is like current funnel, and that's a majestic. So like in draft, like it really is slim pickings for the lightning blues.
Yeah. Hey, current funnel blocks for 3.
The card's really good.
Yeah, wow. You want the blue 3 blocks. Unlucky that it's a majestic, so we don't get to draft or play with it in draft that often.
Yeah, the card kind of a lot of money somehow, but yeah.
Okay, then I guess we end this with saying one last thing. I think Aurora has a bomb. It's called Arc Lightning, and if you have an Arc Lightning, do everything you can to activate Arc Lightning as many times as you can. And if you do, this card is a huge bomb. And it's probably a build around, right? Like you just see this card, pack one, pick one, and I would start building around it right away. I think that's how good Arc Lightning is. I think.
Yeah, the more go agains you can get, the better. Notably, it doesn't even have to be action cards. Like you can like go again with Starfall. You can go again with Bloodtorrent Bodice, and you can go again with Runehold Release. And every time you do that, it pings for one. So you can just like sit there and just be like one arcane, one arcane, one arcane, one arcane. You can do like 7 arcane on a turn, and it's pretty gross. It also, when it goes again itself, it also does 1 arcane. So yeah, Arc Lightning is a pretty crazy flesh and blood card in limited, especially when you can't really stop arcane.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay. Anything else you want to say before we close the episode?
Nah, I think that's long enough. These I'm noticing a trend here that these episodes for Rosetta are pretty long on the how to draft, and I think it makes a lot of sense. This set is very, very deep, a lot going on. How are you feeling about the set, by the way? I know we talked about this last week. Are you liking it? Are you where are you at with the set?
I think I enjoy it. I think this set's fun. I think this set's really skill intensive, and yeah, I think I don't know if it's better than Mistveil for me yet, but it's getting close. It's getting close. It's there's like a lot of archetypes to try. I just haven't been able to try everything that I want to try yet. So I think I'll need like another like 20 more drafts before I say if I like this set or not. I'm just like not there with the Cilio yet, which is like my issue with this draft format right now. Is like I don't really know how I want to get into Cilio or like how I want to do that portion of the draft format yet.
That makes sense. Yeah, I had similar doubts about this format, and the more that I drafted, the more that I'm like, I'm pretty sure every hero is good. I'm pretty sure every card pool is good, and I'm pretty sure every hero can be built in multiple ways, which has me like very excited about the set. Although there is some stuff I'm still figuring out. But yeah, I do have a pretty good grasp on Acilio, so maybe we can touch on that next week. I think people will be interested in that as well, and then we can round out our how to draft series with Florian, I guess, which I think most people will have known, but maybe we'll have some extra insights for folks as well. So that's coming up, and people can look forward to that, hopefully.
Yeah, I kind of like keeping the most simple hero at the very end because like people should be able to figure out Florian pretty easily.
Yeah. We wanted to start with a lightning hero, but then we sat down week 1 and we're like, so do you know how to draft this? No. Do you? No. Okay. We're going to do an earth hero maybe next week.
yeah. The behind the scenes on the bauble is if we can't figure out the hero in the limited format, we have to push it a week, and then we draft like 3-4 times, and then we try and figure it out.
Yeah. There's definitely some puzzles in this format, which honestly is pretty cool. I feel like the more I draft it, the more possibilities I see, which is the sign of a great format. But we will see where it ends up. Honestly, I'm like really excited for Worlds, specifically drafting this set at Worlds. It's gonna be so fun.
Oh, you're so lucky. I don't even get to draft this at a premiere event.
Yeah,
that's the one thing that I kind of not. It's not like that I don't like about it, but like is the thing that makes me kind of sad is like it's unless you're qualified for every PT in every world, there's usually only one event that like has a really big limited portion. So it's like if I don't qualify for a random pro tour or like a worlds, I don't really get to draft this set in like a high level setting, which also is another reason that I really like nationals. It's really easy to qualify to nationals, and then it's like a high level draft setting for that. So you know what? Keep worlds going, please, Flesh and Blood. But you know, maybe a calling or two at limited, please, where we can draft. Oh, like I wish I went to the world premiere. Oh.
Yeah, they've definitely been getting better about doing that. So,
but the thing
that is cool to see.
The thing with the world premieres, though, is like I kind of wish that we have a little bit of time to like work with the set and then do the limited calling. Whereas like there isn't really a limited calling after the world premiere, right?
Well, there was just not in North America.
Oh yeah, I have to spend like $1,200 to get there and hotel. Yeah, I can't do that. I am not made out of money.
Well, usually the way that it works is like they'll do like it seems like they've been doing like the world premiere in one region and then a calling somewhere else. Like like heavy hitters had Queenstown, so New Zealand for the world premiere, and then we had Hartford on, I believe it was release weekend. Yeah, it was release weekend, and that was a limited calling as well. So they do come around, but yeah, release weekend is still pretty early. So
Yeah, so I feel like it ends up being like, oh, I only got to do 3 or 4 drafts of the format, and then maybe like 2 months later, I'll be like, man, I really know this format, but there's no events to play.
mhm.
Is what I feel like is happening right now. I wish there would be like one more limited calling somewhere where we can like really play the limited once everything's been settled and discovered. But
Yeah,
that's usually where the Pro Tour and the Worlds is at, which I not qualified for.
I, I think I'm like somewhere in the middle where
Yeah, because you're qualified for these events that you get to go do
no,
this.
no, 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 no. Let me let me finish. Let me finish. I think that for me, the best limited would be like in the middle of the Pro Tour, like somewhere like timeline wise, in the middle between World Premiere, which is like very exciting and fun in its own right. But after that, but before like PT Worlds timeline, I think like if you have like 3-4 weeks with the set, that's like kind of perfect because you have enough time to figure stuff out. Not everyone will have figured everything out, and it feels like there's more edges. I feel like sometimes like you get to these sets and it's been like 2.5 months and it's just like, I don't know, like the format's like kind of solved, basically everybody knows everything, and it's like, I don't know, I think it's like more interesting when there's like a little bit more room for more edges.
You know what? I think I know what you're talking about. You're talking about Worlds with Uprising, aren't you?
That was terrible.
Yeah, Worlds with Uprising. Uprising, I think, was a
That was like 7 months or something. Like that was, we had that set forever.
yeah. That also that set wasn't really that great. I think Flesh and Blood's gone a long way since then, but yeah, that was a long time in that set. Yeah, that was too long.
Yeah, I agree with all that. I even think that like for Mistvale, I liked where the format was like maybe around like nationals was actually like pretty good. It was like still pretty early. But I felt like by the time we got to Amsterdam, it was just like everybody knows everything so well, and then it just becomes like really, really hard. Maybe I'm just complaining. I don't know. It's
Yeah,
just like,
you're just complaining that you're not getting an edge in these like Pro Tour level and the Worlds level events because they had too much time to prepare.
yeah, I wanna have some urgency, so people have to spend time prepping limited instead of waiting for On the Bobble to come out, and then they tell me I listened to your podcast to help me beat you, and I go, oh yay, fantastic. Thank you for listening.
Talking about content, you were mentioned by what's his name? James White? Is that James White?
Oh yeah, I forgot about this.
Yeah, in the dev talk, and you were predicted to win Worlds this year from the creator himself. How do you feel about that?
I was like kind of shocked. Like people told me that like James White shouted you out. I'm like, oh, okay. And then I watched the video. I'm like, wait. Like, what did he say? So yeah, I was pretty floored. I appreciate the kind words from James a lot. I will do the best that I can. I'm honestly feeling pretty good about Worlds at the moment. We'll see. Like, you're gonna talk to me like 2 weeks before, and you're like, "How's Worlds going?" You can be like, "I have no idea what deck I'm on. I'm like deciding between 4 decks. I'm stressed." So yeah, that's probably what's going to happen. But I've been really liking this limited format. I feel like it's really clicking for me, and I'm pretty confident that I'm going to be in a very good spot for limited at the very least. It kind of reminds me of like bright lights in terms of like synergy and complexity, and I think that it just like really rewards you for staying open and understanding all the lanes. So I'm super excited for that. And then we'll see. CC is also like pretty wide open, so I think that like prep is going to be really important in both of these formats, CC and draft, for this Worlds. It's always important, but maybe this particular event even more so.
Yeah, good luck with that. I'm excited to hear your complaints about CC and being like there's 3 good decks. I don't know which 3 decks to bring, and you're gonna bring all 3 of them and then decide the day before.
Yeah, that does
That's
kind of sound like something I would do, doesn't it?
Yeah, it feels like that's what you do every event. So I'm not even too surprised on that.
Yeah, yeah. I gotta start testing Armory Deck Dio. I feel like everybody's talking about Armory Deck Dio, and I'm like, yup, Cerebellum Processor. That card sure is a good Flesh and Blood card, especially when they banned all the cards that let you draw cards. So I'm a little behind on that one, but I feel like I have a lot of the rest of the meta figured out. So yeah, Armory Deck Dio. Pretty interesting. It's cool that we have like ProQuest, and then third week we have this like new Armory deck dropping, and it's gonna like further shake things up. I think like I don't know. Flesh and Blood gets solved pretty quick these days compared to before, but I think that is going to be pretty interesting at Worlds. I wonder if we'll see anything spicy.
Yeah, or you can be the one to bring some kind of spicy deck.
Riptide?
Oh, Riptide.
Nah, I think Riptide's pretty bad. I don't know how you beat Enigma, unless maybe Dio will kill all the Enigmas for me. I don't know.
Oh, maybe that's the thing that we needed to kill the Enigmas was Dio Armory deck. That makes sense. I'm so down for that.
Yeah, we'll see. I think that we have rambled long enough. Thank you all for listening. I hope this episode helped you out and gave you an idea of how to draft Aurora. Best of luck to you at all of your upcoming PQs as well as Worlds if you are getting ready for that. And yeah, we just really appreciate you. Thank you all for listening, and thanks to all the patrons who get back to the show. We couldn't be doing this without you. All right, that's going to be a wrap. If you want to get in touch with us, Jay is at UadaJ on Twitter. I'm at Yukili Bender. Our email is onthebobble@gmail.com, and our Patreon is patreon.com/onthebobble. Until next time, have fun drafting.